Hi, my name is Ken Hughes. Welcome back, and today I want to talk to you about failure, about success, about innovation, about resilience and risk. Because to me, all those things are working together to fuel your innovation engine. I'm yet to meet a brand or business that doesn't want to have an innovative philosophy, that doesn't want to create new products and services, that doesn't get first to market. And yet we have a really unhealthy relationship with failure. We see failure as a negative thing. We see actually failure and success as some kind of continuum, that on one hand we have success, we have the goals, and that's what we want to achieve, and on the other hand we have failure. It's a bad place, we don't want to be there. And so plotting that continuum, unfortunately, is disturbing because it isn't real. What's real is that it's kind of more like an infinity loop, where really failure and success are kind of two sides of the same coin. You don't get one without the other. In fact, next year, 2024, we'll be in Paris for the Olympics. And onto those podiums, the athletes that stand there as the medals get slipped around their necks, they'll be crying tears of celebratory joy. But in those tears is also the realization of all the past failures, all the pain. I mean, no athlete stands on that podium without a marked relationship with pain and failure. That's how you get there in the end. And so, understanding that the people who succeed in life generally have had multiple failures before they get there. I mean, look at someone like Tom Brady, the NFL quarterback. He was, 199th person picked in the 6th draft. Michael Jordan was the guy, one of the most famous basketball players in the world, but he was kicked off his high school basketball team. Michael Phelps, the most successful Olympian of all time, 23 gold medals. When he, as a 15-year-old, joined the American swim team, the youngest participant in 70 years, he was tipped for great things. In that first Olympics in Sydney in 2000, he came away with absolutely nothing. J.K. Rowling, we all know that story, brought her manuscript to 11 or 12 different publishers before Bloomsbury took a risk and published Harry Potter. And even people that we know well. Steve Jobs got kicked out of his own company. Bill Gates had a company called Trafo Data, which was an amazing disaster before he went on to found Microsoft. But it was in that company that himself and Paul Allen learned the skills that they brought to form Microsoft. Tesla struggled hugely to break into the automotive industry in the beginning, as did SpaceX. If you look at Google Glass, the Google Glass project was canned eventually from a consumer point of view. Google Plus, the social media platform that was to compete with Facebook, is no longer in existence. Microsoft Zune, do you remember that? No, you don't, because it was the iPod, Microsoft's iPod attempt. It didn't take off. Amazon's Fire Phone, heralded for great things, doesn't exist anymore. Oprah Winfrey was famously fired from her first TV job because they thought she was inexperienced and her talent wasn't great. Went on to become, one of the biggest TV personalities of the world. So it's about, failure isn't necessarily about, and we all know this, failure isn't the falling down, it's the staying down. So people who succeed tend to get themselves back up. But unless you're learning from those mistakes, obviously, you just keep falling and keep repeating the same mistake. I mean, some brands even put the name of their failures into the brand name. WD-40, the famous DIY lubricant and rust remover, is called WD-40, Water Displacement 40. It's the 40th formula that they invented. 39 previous formulas didn't work. Hershey's, the famous chocolate company, he founded 3 different confectionery companies before Hershey's finally made it. And so there's lots of examples of companies that made it after repetitive failures. And so it's important to lean into failure and to understand that within failure lies the secret to success. But then, of course, you have to understand how risk works, because we don't want to just put stuff out there and fail for the sake of failure. We want to understand how risk works. And so what's a fair risk to take? What's a scarier risk to take? And that's a continuum. Because on one side, you've got a calculated risk. And a calculated risk is a risk that you kind of know the shape of. You've looked at the data, you've looked at all the outcomes, possibly you've planned the scenarios. So before you jump in there, you do it quite confidently. It's a bit like scuba diving, I guess. If you go scuba diving, you've done your training, you know the emergency procedures. Yes, it's a risky business, and about 80 or 100 people die every year in the US and Canada alone in scuba diving. So it is on the risk spectrum, but it's low, it's calculated. If you come up a little bit into the middle of that continuum, not all the way to unmitigated risk. Unmitigated risk is kind of chaos. It's complete uncertainty. It's really just putting it out there, seeing what happens. It's a scary, raw place. So in the middle of that continuum for me is kind of what I call risk plus. And it's not safe, calculated risk, but it's a little bit, here's a great example. This guy called Luke Atkins is his name, I think. A parachutist who set the world record a few years ago for a 20,000 foot jump without a parachute, like zero parachute, had to hit a safety net all the way from that height. That's a binary outcome. It's either a 1 or a 0. And as you're watching it, as he hurtles towards the ground, I mean, if you watch this full video at some point, your heart is in your mouth, and he does hit the net, and he makes it. But it's certainly further up along that continuum than just the calculated risk I talked about when you scuba dive. And then at the other end of that is, as you keep moving up that continuum, you get into places like these guys, the parkour runners who hang from cranes. This is James Kingston, and thankfully he is still alive, still with us, but many of them aren't. And so they're up that other end of uncalculated risks, where they are trained and they're great athletes, but the probability for failure is just higher, and it's a scarier risk. So where are you in your organization? Where are you in that risk continuum? Because I think if you're at the end, if you're playing it very safe in the calculated risk space, it's unlikely you're ever going to break through in terms of amazing innovation. Now, to return to that idea of failure and repeatedly trying. So Thomas Edison famously said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. And so you do have to have a really healthy relationship with failure to succeed. And all the scientific literature points to the recovery time in failure as being the potential for success. So it's not about how many times you fail. It's not about the iterative innovation that you kind of learn from your mistakes and move forward. It's actually about the time between the failure and trying again. That's the piece that defines people's success. Watch this clip. This is a athlete clip from the US. It's the 600 meter inter-college championship. And the lead athlete, who's probably going to go on to win the race, her ankle gets clipped and she falls, and now the race is over for her. Come on, they're in the last lap. There's no way she's going to catch them. But look at the speed at which she recovers. The speed at which she falls and gets back up is amazing. And of course, she keeps going. She turns on all the skills and all the training she has, and she does eventually win that race, which is spectacular to watch.
She is going to catch Fondor, and she may catch the leader.
Wow.
But she's got fun.
This is a gutsy effort by Dornaden. Can she pull it off? She's moved into third. Dornaden coming down the stretch from the outside. Dornaden coming on strong. Dornaden all the way. Dornaden. Yes, she did it.
Wow.
How did she win the race? Is it all her training? Is it her, her skills? Well, yes, but it was really won in the moment she decided to get back up immediately after falling. So if she'd stayed on the ground for 1 second more, that race would not have been hers to have. And so the same is true of us. We have to be able to recover quickly from failure. That's where we get that expression, fail fast. And so failing fast in our organizations is really important. How do we encourage that? Well, we have to kind of put up structures that allow our employees and our teams to understand that it's okay to fail, that we destigmatize failure, that we start to celebrate failure. In fact, we celebrate success, we have awards, but where are the failure awards? Where are the awards for people that took a risk, that allocated resources in a certain way, that just tried something, maybe it didn't work? We need to start rewarding that. We need to let people understand it's okay to experiment. Set up a culture of experimentation, again, with structures and processes and resources and teams that they know that they can have a go. Once you've destigmatized failure, you celebrate failure, you've given them experimentation. At that point, then people feel comfortable with taking risks. And again, if we build it up to risk plus, then we actually start to have a organization that believes in risk, that understands it's okay to fail. And the more you do that, the more you learn from those failures, the more you continuously move forward towards that goal, which is success. I'm Ken Hughes. See you next time.